Get out! The suitcase hit the wet pavement with a crack that made the neighbors across the street freeze on their porches. Sophia stood at the front door of the house she had cleaned, decorated, and paid the first mortgage on, rain soaking through her thin blouse, both arms wrapped around her 8-month belly. Lightning split the sky behind her. Thunder followed immediately, close and violent. She was shaking, not from the cold, but from disbelief. Pure, suffocating disbelief. Daniel! Her voice broke on his name. Daniel, please, just let me explain. There is nothing to explain. Daniel Mercer stood in the doorway, tall and immaculate in his pressed shirt, not a drop of rain on him. His jaw was tight. His eyes were the eyes of a stranger. I saw the messages, Sophia. I saw everything. Those messages aren't real. I don't even know that man. Someone sent those to you, Daniel. Someone set this up. I said there is nothing to explain. Behind him, a woman appeared in the hallway. Vanessa Cole was beautiful in the way expensive things are beautiful. Polished, deliberate, cold. She rested one hand on Daniel's shoulder and looked at Sophia over his arm with an expression that was almost sorry. Almost. The corner of her mouth gave her away. Daniel. Sophia's voice dropped to a whisper. She pressed one hand to her belly. I am 8 months pregnant with your children. You are sending me out in a storm. Please think about what you are doing. I want you gone, he said. Tonight. Daniel. He stepped back, and he closed the door. The sound of it, the quiet, final click of that latch, was worse than any slam would have been. Sophia stood on the step while the rain hammered her shoulders and soaked through to her skin, and she looked at the closed door of her own home, and she understood, somewhere deep and wordless, that the life she had built here was over. She picked up her suitcase. She walked into the storm. She had nowhere to go. If you are watching this and you already know this woman deserves better, hit that like button right now and make sure you subscribe, because this story is going to take you somewhere you are absolutely not expecting. 6 years before that night, Sophia Reeves had been 23 years old, working a double shift at a diner during the week and a second job at a copy center on weekends, sending every extra dollar to a man she believed in completely. Daniel had been a dream then, brilliant, hungry, full of plans that he spread across the kitchen table of their tiny apartment like maps to a country only he could see. He had an idea for a logistics company. He needed startup capital. He needed time to build his client list. He needed someone to hold everything together while he focused. Sophia held everything together. She cooked, she cleaned, she paid the rent, she covered the utilities. She took out a small personal loan when Daniel's prototype software needed development funding. She quit the classes she had been taking at night school because there wasn't time for both. She told herself it was temporary. She told herself that when Daniel made it, they would make it together. She believed that with everything she had, Daniel made it. In 4 years, the company had grown from a kitchen table operation to a firm with 43 employees and contracts with 3 national retailers. Their apartment became a house. The house became a mansion. Daniel's name appeared in a business magazine under the headline, Self-Made at 30. There was a full-page photograph. He was smiling in a way that Sophia recognized, that wide, bright, uncomplicated smile she had fallen in love with, and she cut it out and taped it inside her journal because she was proud of him. She was so proud of him. She did not notice at first that he had stopped being proud of her. It happened gradually, the way the most devastating things always do. He stopped asking her opinion at dinner parties. He began correcting her in front of friends, small corrections, delivered with a smile, about her pronunciation of a wine name, her unfamiliarity with a business term, her choice of outfit for an event. He hired people to handle the household, and then he used the fact that she had nothing to manage as evidence that she contributed nothing. He started staying late at the office. He started coming home without explanation. Vanessa appeared in his life in the form of a new marketing consultant his company hired. Sophia met her once at a company dinner. Beautiful, sharp, attentive to Daniel in a way that Sophia registered and then pushed down because she trusted her husband. She trusted him. Vanessa had been planning her exit long before Sophia saw it coming. She found a man online whose number she planted in a fake message thread On a burner phone she set up with Sophia's name. She photographed the screen. She sent it to Daniel with a note that said, "I thought you should know. I'm so sorry." She had done her research. She knew Daniel's pride, his ego, his terror of being made a fool of. She knew exactly which button to press, and she pressed it perfectly. Daniel believed it instantly. He didn't ask Sophia first. He didn't go to her and say, "I need to show you something." He sat with the image for 2 weeks, feeding his rage in private, and by the time he confronted her, he had already decided on the verdict. The trial was just ceremony. Out in the rain, Sophia had no idea any of this had been engineered. She only knew that the man she had sacrificed years of her life for had looked at her across the threshold of the house she had helped build and chosen a closed door. She walked for 20 minutes in the storm before her legs began to give. The suitcase was too heavy. Her back had been aching since morning. She found a low wall outside a closed pharmacy and sat down on it, rain streaming down her face, and she pressed both hands to her belly and breathed. Then the contractions started. They were not severe, not yet, but they were real. A slow, tightening pressure that radiated from her lower back and moved forward, and Sophia's breath caught, and she thought, "Not now. Please, not now." She had no phone. It was inside the house. She had grabbed her suitcase on instinct and walked out in a daze, and now she was sitting on a wall in a thunderstorm with her babies beginning to announce themselves, and there was no one on the street, and she didn't know what to do. That was when the headlights appeared. Not one car, a convoy. 3 black SUVs moving in tight formation. The kind of vehicles that don't belong in a residential neighborhood. That projects something serious and wordless just by existing. They slowed as they passed the pharmacy. They stopped. The front passenger door of the middle vehicle opened, and a large man climbed out, wide-shouldered, scanning the street with the automatic alertness of someone trained to do exactly that. He looked at Sophia on the wall. He spoke into an earpiece. Then the rear door of the middle SUV opened, and Luca Romano stepped out into the rain. He was not what she expected. He was perhaps 38, lean rather than broad, dark-haired, wearing a black coat that the rain immediately began to darken at the shoulders. He had a face that was hard to look away from, not because it was beautiful, though it was, but because of the quality of attention in it. He looked at things the way surgeons look at things, completely, without wasted motion. He looked at Sophia. He went completely still. He walked to her without hurrying, the rain falling around him, and he crouched down to her level so he was not standing over her, and he said, "Are you in labor?" "I don't. Possibly. It's early. I'm 8 months." "Are you alone?" "Yes." He looked at her for one more second. Then he stood and said to the large man behind him, "Get her bag." "I don't know you," Sophia said. "No," he said, "but I know you." She stared at him. 3 years ago," he said. "A parking garage on Meridian Street. 2 men with guns and a woman who hid me in the trunk of her car and drove me out of there without asking a single question." He held her gaze. "You were wearing a red coat. You told me your name was Sophia." The blood drained from her face. She did remember. She had been retrieving her car after a late shift, had heard shouting and then gunshots, and a man had appeared from nowhere, bleeding, desperate, and she had made a split-second decision she had never fully understood. She had popped the trunk. He had climbed in. She had driven him to the nearest hospital and left before anyone could ask her anything because she was terrified. She had never known who he was. "I have been looking for you," Luca said, "for 3 years." She had no words. "Come," he said. "We'll take you somewhere warm. You and the babies." He didn't wait for her to argue. He simply offered his hand, steady and certain, and after a moment that felt like standing at the edge of something vast, Sophia took it. Inside the SUV, wrapped in a coat someone produced from somewhere, Sophia felt the contractions ease slightly and leaned her head back against the seat. Luca sat beside her. He didn't crowd her. He didn't pepper her with questions. He simply watched her the way people watch something they have been worried about for a long time and are now relieved to see. "Are you going to tell me who you are?" she asked. "Luca Romano." She recognized the name then, in the way you recognize something you have heard in a whisper in a different context. The Romano name was not unknown in the city. It was the kind of name people said quietly. "You're Yes, he said simply. She absorbed that. And you're taking me to your home. You needed somewhere safe. My home is safe. He said it without drama, like it was the obvious conclusion to a simple equation. I have no phone. My husband... She stopped. Your husband did this? His voice had not changed volume, but something in it shifted. A quality that made the air in the vehicle feel different. He thinks I cheated. I didn't. He threw me out tonight. She pressed her lips together. I haven't cheated. I have never cheated. Those messages, I don't even know how he got them. I don't know. We'll find out, Lucas said. She looked at him. You don't know me. I know enough, he said. A woman who hides a bleeding stranger in her trunk and drives him to safety without asking what he did to deserve it. I know what kind of person that is. She looked out the window at the rain-blurred street and said nothing. The mansion was enormous and lit warmly from within, with a gate that opened as they approached, and staff who appeared instantly without being summoned. A woman named Elena, small, efficient, with the manner of someone who had managed extraordinary situations for many years, took Sophia's arm and guided her inside before Sophia had fully processed where she was. She was taken to a bedroom suite, given dry clothes, warm food, and a doctor who appeared within 30 minutes and examined her carefully and said the contractions had been stress-induced and the babies were stable, and she needed to rest and not exert herself. Sophia lay in the most comfortable bed she had ever been in, staring at the ceiling, and felt the strange sensation of being simultaneously completely lost and for the first time in months, completely safe. Luca knocked before entering. He stood in the doorway. How are you feeling? Like my entire life collapsed tonight and a stranger rescued me from the rain, she said. So, mixed. He almost smiled. The doctor says you need to rest. I know. She looked at him. Luca, I need to understand, what do you want from this? From helping me? He was quiet for a moment. Nothing, he said. You gave me my life 3 years ago. You asked for nothing then either. I don't operate on debt, but I know what it looks like when someone needs help, and I help people who deserve it. How do you know I deserve it? Because you're still asking that question, he said. Entitled people never ask that question. She looked at the ceiling again. My husband is going to come looking. Let him come, Lucas said, and in 2 quiet words he compressed something enormous. A warning, a wall, a complete and total certainty. He said goodnight. He closed the door softly. Sophia slept for 11 hours. While she slept, Luca's people were already working. He had teams for many things. Investigation was among them. By the following morning, he had a name. Marcus Webb, a man Vanessa had paid to create the fake message thread. And by the afternoon, he had a full picture of what Vanessa Cole had done. The forged screenshots, the burner account, the $2,000 payment to Marcus that had moved through a shell account Vanessa thought was untraceable. It was not untraceable, not to Luca's people. He also had Daniel's financial history, and what that revealed made the muscle in his jaw go tight. Sophia's name was nowhere in the public record of Daniel's company, but the loan she had taken out 6 years ago, the one she had told Luca about over dinner on her 3rd night at the mansion, her hands wrapped around a mug, talking quietly while the fire burned, that loan had been the seed capital for Daniel's first software contract. Without that money, the company didn't launch. Without the launch, there was no company. Without the company, there was no mansion, no magazine profile, no Vanessa. Everything Daniel called his success had grown from what Sophia gave up, and Daniel had thrown her into the rain. Lucas sat with that information in his office for a long time. Then he picked up his phone and began making calls. Quiet calls, brief calls, the kind that simply reminded certain people of certain things they owed him. Within 2 weeks, 3 of Daniel's largest investors requested urgent meetings and then withdrew their capital. A major distribution partner cited strategic realignment and terminated their contract. Daniel's calls to business associates began going unanswered. He didn't understand what was happening. He called his attorney, he called his accountant, he called his remaining partners, increasingly frantic. Meanwhile, in Luca's mansion, Sophia was beginning, slowly, to breathe again. It happened in small moments. The morning Elena taught her where the kitchen was and told her she was welcome to cook whatever she wanted. The afternoon, she found the library and sat in it for 4 hours with a book she had been meaning to read for 2 years. The evening, Luca came home and found her on the terrace and sat down across from her without being asked and said, "How was your day?" Like it was a normal thing, like she was a normal person who had normal days that were worth asking about. She started to remember that she was. "You're different than I expected," she told him one evening. "What did you expect?" "Someone colder," she said honestly. He looked at the garden. "I'm cold when it's necessary," he said. "It's not necessary with you." She studied his profile. "Are you always this direct?" "Wasted time bothers me," he said. "Pretending things are other than they are is wasted time." She was quiet for a moment. "Daniel used to tell me I was too sensitive, that I read into things that weren't there, that I was too emotional for serious conversation." Luca turned and looked at her steadily. He was wrong. She felt those 3 words somewhere in her chest. Not as flattery. Luca Romano didn't deal in flattery, she was learning, but as a plain assessment from someone who didn't say things he didn't mean. She was also learning that about him. She told him more, night by night. She told him about the early years, the 2 jobs, the tiny apartment, the loans she had taken in her name for a man's dream. She told him about the dinner parties where she had felt herself shrinking, about the corrections delivered with a smile, about the slow erosion of herself that she had not recognized as erosion until she was already half gone. Luca listened. He never interrupted. When she finished, he didn't rush to fill the silence with solutions or reassurances. He just sat with what she had said, treating it with the weight it deserved. One night she asked him, "Do you ever regret what you do, your work?" He was quiet for a long time. "I regret specific things," he said carefully. "I don't regret all of it. The world has men in it who do terrible things and face no consequence. I provide certain consequences." He looked at her. "That's as honest an answer as I can give you." "It's more honest than most people give," she said. He nodded once. "Are you falling in love with me?" she asked. He looked at her for a long, steady moment. "Yes," he said. No hesitation, no deflection, just the word, placed in the space between them like a fact on a table. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, "I'm not ready for that." "I know," he said. "I'm not asking you to be." She looked at him. Most men would have pushed. "I'm not most men," he said simply, and looked back at the garden and changed the subject with a seamlessness that told her the conversation was genuinely over. No performance, no sulking, no withdrawal of warmth. Just an uncomplicated acceptance of where she was. She understood in that moment exactly how dangerous Luca Romano was to her. Not in the way that should have frightened her. In the way that kind, certain, patient men are dangerous. In the way that makes every wall you have ever built feel completely unnecessary. And then the truth about Vanessa broke open. It was Daniel who found it first. A former employee of Vanessa's, a junior assistant she had treated badly, and who had consequently kept records she shouldn't have kept, brought a folder to Daniel's office one Thursday morning. The assistant's name was not important. What was in the folder was screenshots of Vanessa's communications with Marcus Webb, bank records for the transfer, the name of the Shell account, a receipt for the burner phone purchased in cash at a store 3 miles from Vanessa's apartment. Daniel sat alone in his office with the folder on his desk and read it 3 times. He read it like a man watching his own house burn down. Slowly, with the particular horror of understanding that he had handed someone the match. Sophia had never cheated. The babies were his, had always been his, and he had taken fake evidence from the woman sleeping in his house and used it to close the door on his pregnant wife in a thunderstorm. He called Vanessa immediately. She answered on the second ring, and Daniel had spent enough years in business to know that you never show your hand before you need to, so he said nothing about the folder. He said he wanted to take her to dinner. She was delighted. They were seated at a restaurant that Daniel had chosen specifically. Quiet, private, a booth in the back where the ambient noise would swallow a conversation. He waited until the first course was cleared. Then he slid the folder across the table. Vanessa looked down at it. She looked up at Daniel. "Who gave you this?" she said. "It doesn't matter." She was quiet for a moment, a professional calculating silence. Then she closed the folder and sat back. "I did what I had to do," she said. "You were never going to leave her on your own. I needed nothing from you," Daniel said. His voice was controlled, but the skin around his eyes was white. You manufactured evidence. You destroyed my marriage. You made me throw my pregnant wife into the rain. I gave you freedom. My children, he said. You told me. You looked at the scan and you said. He stopped. He pressed his hand flat to the table. She never cheated. Those babies are mine. Do you understand what you made me do? Vanessa met his eyes. You wanted to believe it, she said quietly. Don't put all of this on me. You wanted a reason. He stared at her. And the terrible thing, the thing that hit him somewhere he had no defense for, was that she wasn't entirely wrong. He had wanted to believe it, because it was easier to be the wrong party than to admit he had been treating Sophia like furniture for 2 years, that he had been quietly ashamed of where they came from now that he had money, that Vanessa had offered him an exit, and he had taken it with both hands and called it justice. He had destroyed his own family. Vanessa had handed him the weapon, but he had swung it himself. He left the restaurant without another word. Vanessa, for her part, was home within the hour packing a bag. She had her own exit plan. She had always had one. The company account she had been quietly diverting small sums into for 8 months had a balance that would sustain her comfortably for some time. She left no note. She left no forwarding address. She simply disappeared, the way people do when they have burned something to the ground and have the presence of mind to leave before the fire reaches them. Daniel discovered the missing funds 3 days later. His business was in crisis. His investors were gone. His major partner had left. His money was short. His wife was gone. His children, were being carried by a woman he had thrown into the rain. And the woman who had engineered all of it was in another city, living off money she had stolen from him, untouchable. He sat in the empty mansion and understood, with a comprehension that was physical in its weight, what ruin felt like from the inside. Now, if you have been watching this and you are feeling that Sophia is about to get everything she deserves, comment below, justice is coming. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it right now because this story is not over. It was Luca's doctor who called for the ambulance. Sophia had been in the library when it started, not gradually this time, but all at once, her breath cut short by a contraction that was nothing like the stress cramps of the rainy night. She gripped the bookshelf. She called out. Elena appeared within 30 seconds, and within 3 minutes, Luca was at her side, and within 10 minutes, they were in motion. He rode with her. He sat in that ambulance with his hand in hers and did not look away from her face, tracking her breathing, watching the paramedic, asking questions in the calm, authoritative voice of someone who needed accurate information and would get it. Between contractions, Sophia looked at him and thought, this man, who runs criminal empires across 6 cities, who has rooms full of people afraid of him, is sitting here in this ambulance looking at me like I am the thing he would choose above everything else. I'm scared, she said. I know, he said. You're also the bravest person I have met in 10 years, and you are going to be fine. You don't know that. I am very rarely wrong, he said, and the absolute certainty of it, delivered without arrogance, made her almost laugh between contractions. She made it into surgery. Complications. The twins were positioned in a way that required intervention. Meant 2 hours of waiting for Luca. He did not sit. He stood in the corridor outside the operating theater, and he did not move for those 2 hours. And the nurses who passed him noted later that they had never seen a man stand so still for so long, or look quite so much like someone trying to hold something together through sheer force of will. He had handled the deaths of people close to him. He had handled threats and betrayals and losses of a kind that most people would not survive. He was not, by any measure of the word, a soft man. But standing in that corridor, waiting, he understood for the first time in his life what it meant to be completely unable to control an outcome. He could not negotiate with this. He could not make a call and fix this. He could only wait, and it was the hardest thing he had done in years. The doctor came out at 11:47. Both babies are healthy, she said. Mom is recovering well. Luca sat down, just for a second. He pressed his hand flat to his knee and breathed. Then he stood back up. When they brought him in, Sophia was pale and exhausted and more beautiful than he had the appropriate language for. 2 small bundles were arranged in the crooks of her arms. Boy and a girl, she said. Her voice was rough. Her eyes were full. He crossed to the chair beside her bed. He looked at the babies, really looked at them, with the total focus he gave to everything. And something in his face softened in a way that the people who knew him would not have recognized. "They're perfect," he said quietly. "Hold one," she said. "Sophia." "Hold one, Luca." He picked up the boy. Carefully, the way he handled everything that mattered, with complete and unhurried attention. The baby was impossibly small against his hands. He looked down at the tiny face and the tiny fist, and the tiny fist curled instinctively around his index finger, and something happened in Luca Romano's chest that could only be described as the permanent rearrangement of his priorities. "Hello," he said quietly. Just that. "Hello." Sophia watched him, and she understood, in that moment without ambiguity, what she wanted. 6 months passed. Sophia named her children Marco and Adese. Marco for Luca's father, whose photograph she had noticed in the hallway and asked about, and Adese for her own grandmother, because she was done letting the world tell her that where she came from was something to be quieted. Luca said both names were perfect and meant them. She launched a business from the east wing of the mansion, a logistics consultancy, which had a logic to it that made Luca smile when she told him why she had chosen it. "I know the industry," she said. "I watched Daniel build his company from nothing. I know every mistake he made. I'm not going to make them." She had a client within 3 weeks, 5 clients within 2 months. By month 6, she had a waiting list. Marco and Adese thrived. Marco was serious and watchful with his father's dark eyes. Adese was loud and emphatic and had strong opinions about everything from 4 months old. Luca held them both with the same competence he brought to everything, and they responded to his voice the way children respond to people they have decided to trust completely. It was on a Tuesday evening, ordinary in every way, that Daniel came. Elena told Sophia first. She came to find her in the garden where Sophia was sitting in the late light with a daze in her lap, and her expression told the story before her words did. "Your ex-husband is at the gate," Elena said. Sophia sat very still for a moment. Then she looked up and found Luca already crossing the garden toward her, unhurried, having been told by his men the moment Daniel's car pulled up. He stood beside her and waited for her to speak. "Let him in," she said. Daniel walked up the garden path looking like a man who had been reduced by weather. The expensive suit was there, but it hung differently. His face had new lines in it. He looked at the mansion with an expression that moved through envy and landed on something more honest: shame. He saw Luca first and he stopped walking. He had learned by now who Luca Romano was. The knowledge moved across his face in a complicated way. "I need to speak to my wife," Daniel said. "Ex-wife," Luca said. Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked at Sophia. "Sophia, please." She stood, shifting a daze to her hip, and looked at the father of her children and waited. "I know," he said. "I know what Vanessa did. I know the truth. I know the messages were fake. I know you never—" He stopped, pressed his lips together. "I should have come to you first. I should have asked you. I should never have. I threw you out in the rain." His voice cracked on the last words. "You were 8 months pregnant, and I threw you out in the rain, and I have not slept properly since, because every time I close my eyes, I see you standing at that door and—" "Daniel." Her voice was quiet. He stopped. "I know you're sorry," she said. "I believe you're sorry. What Vanessa did was wrong, and I'm not going to pretend otherwise." She shifted a daze again. "But I need you to hear me. What Vanessa handed you was a match. The house was already full of gas. You had been making me feel invisible for 2 years before she arrived. You had been correcting me in public and ignoring me in private, and treating my sacrifices like they were invisible. She gave you a reason, and you took it because you wanted one." His face crumpled. "You didn't lose me because of Vanessa," she said. "You lost me because you stopped valuing me. Long before that night." He was quiet for a long moment. When he looked up, his eyes were wet, and she could see that the words had hit their mark. Not because they were weapons, but because they were simply true, and he knew they were true. "I want to meet them," he said. "My children. I'm not asking for anything else. They're mine, and I want—" "We will arrange something," she said, "for their sake. Not yours. For theirs." She looked at him steadily. But you will never tell them that you chose this. You will let them know that they were always wanted and always valued, even if you have to carry the lie. They will not grow up carrying your guilt. Do you understand me? He nodded. He couldn't speak. Then go home, she said. Your lawyer will hear from mine. He turned. He walked back down the path. At the gate, he paused and looked back, and he saw Sophia standing in the garden of a life he could not access, with a man beside her who looked at her the way Daniel had been too busy to look at her when he'd had the chance. He looked for a long moment. Then he got in his car and drove away. Sophia felt Luca's hand at the small of her back. Quiet, present. You okay? He asked. Yes, she said. And she was. The proposal happened 3 weeks later, quietly, in the library where she had spent the best hours of the last months, surrounded by books and the particular light of late afternoon. No audience, no grand gesture, no performance. Luca simply put a ring on the table. Antique, simple, exactly right, and looked at her. I don't need an answer today, he said. I don't need an answer this month. I need you to want this completely, and I will wait as long as that takes. She looked at the ring. She thought about a girl who had worked 2 jobs for a man's dream, who had taken out loans in her name, who had made herself smaller and smaller until she almost couldn't find herself anymore, who had walked out into a storm with nothing and somehow, improbably, irrevocably, ended up here. She picked up the ring and handed it back to him. He went very still. Put it on me, she said. His eyes held hers. He took the ring. He slid it onto her finger. Carefully. Completely. The way Luca Romano did everything that mattered. Their wedding was in the garden in spring. The twins were carried down the makeshift aisle by Elena, who cried through the entire ceremony. Rosa, whom Sophia had insisted be flown in, sat in the front row and approved of everything. Luca's men, arranged at respectful distances around the property, were, if you look closely, smiling. Sophia wore deep red. She wore it because she liked it, because she had always liked it, because she was done apologizing for what she wanted. She wore it because the last time she had worn red was a parking garage on Meridian Street, 3 years before, when she had hidden a bleeding stranger in her trunk and driven him to safety without asking a single question. And that stranger had spent 3 years looking for her and found her in the rain and brought her home. Marco and Adese, at 6 months old, were oblivious to the ceremony but deeply engaged with the flowers, which they attempted to eat. Luca noticed and redirected them without breaking his eye contact with Sophia during the vows, which she would tell this story about for the rest of her life. The night Daniel Mercer threw his pregnant wife into the storm, he believed he was cutting loose a problem. He had no way of knowing that he was releasing her, that the door he closed would open her into a life larger and warmer and more genuinely hers than anything she had known inside his house. He had no way of knowing that the rain he sent her into was the beginning of her. Some people throw away their blessings and spend the rest of their lives understanding exactly what they have lost. Some storms carry you somewhere you could not have reached in the dry. And sometimes the man who stops his convoy for a woman sitting alone on a wall in the rain is exactly who she needed. And she is exactly who he had been looking for all along. If this story moved you, subscribe to this channel right now because there are more stories like this one coming. Stories about love that finds people in impossible places. About women who walk through fire and come out the other side more themselves than they have ever been. Hit that notification bell so you never miss one. And leave a comment below. I want to know, did Sophia make the right choice? Tell me what you think. The end.